other though. Huh? It's the other though. The other though, yeah.
Let's start with the Yedid Nigun.
You want me to start?
Sure. Page 322, Shabbat Shalom. Yedid nefesh av harachaman meshoch avdecha el retzonecha yarutz avdecha כמו אייל ישתחווה אל מול הדרך ירב לו ידידותך מנופת צוף וכל טעם הדור נאה זיו העולם נפשי חולת אהבתך אנא אל נא רפא נעלה בהדרות לך נועם זיווך אז תתחזק ותתרפא והייתה לה שמחת עולם יאללה לילה לילה יאללה לילה לילה יאללה לילה 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 yalla lai 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 yalla lai lai la la lai yalla lai 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 la la lai 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 yalla lai 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 yalla lai 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 yalla lai 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 la la lai 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 yalla lai 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 yalla lai 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 yalla lai 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 lai
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's so good to be here. Helps me to breathe when I get to see you all, to be physically present with you all. Every week that I stand, that we gather, I always have one of the same questions, like, wait, what's the point? And this is one of 365 answers or more to the question, what's the point? I was reminded of a meaningful little idea about sculptors. That some sculptors apparently have said that when they get a piece of wood or a piece of metal or some material, they try to explain like what's the process for them, the creative artistic process, and it's natural to think. I just go to my instinct. Oh, they like know before when it's just this block. I know what's going to come out. And there's some sculptors apparently who have said that's not at all what it's like. In fact, really, their work, their job, their mission is to allow the essence of this piece of art to shine forth. And that means actually not exactly to create, but to liberate. Like there is some essential essence, essential image inside this block of stone, block of wood, block of some sort of metal. And their job is to liberate that essence and allow it to carve away what conceals the essence. And I think of that idea, I think it's related to the question, the subject, like, wait, what's Shabbat about? And also, there are a number of things that it relates in my mind to this week. I don't know if you all had Rabbi Steve Folberg come to mind. There's a reason that he came to mind, which is not a happy reason, which is the terrible act of anti-Semitism in Austin this past week. But I've heard from many congregants who know or knew Steve and talked about him as such a wonderful teacher. And the subject of teaching, I think, is related to this idea with the sculpting. It turns out also this is we're on the Rosh Chodesh Kislev, Kislev, the month of Hanukkah, and you might know that what's the root of Hanukkah? Chinuch, which is education. And also our Parsha is about maybe a failure of education of Isaac and Rebekah and their two sons. And it reminds me of a quote that goes, Chanoch lena'ar. Can you hear the connection between Chanoch and Hanukkah? Chanoch, educate, teach a child. Gilda, you're a teacher. Thinking about, you know this very well. Chanoch lena'ar al pi darko, according to her or his own nature. What kind of a student is he or she? What are her or his great strengths or weaknesses? What is it that brings this child, this student alive? And so I think I'm going to talk about this tomorrow morning at Torah study. First time tomorrow morning that we'll be physically together in a year and a half or however many months. But I think that's also the essence of lighting the Shabbat candles. Thank you, Martha. It's the essence of lighting Shabbat candles, bringing in the light of Shabbat. If I can ask Arlene, where are you, Arlene? Oh yeah, you moved. to light our Shabbat candles. I think that is one answer. Like, wait, what's going on? Why do we light candles? Here, come around. And the candles, the light of the candles is about helping to illuminate those great gifts, those beautiful qualities that all of us, but particularly our young people, have. Thank you, Arlene.
And this is from a new grandson, born in Israel a few weeks ago. Asher Zelig.
Okay. Arlene's new great-grandson, Asher Zelig.
Yes.
Go for it.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
We turn to page 12 as we begin our journey through the Psalms, the first 4 lines of Psalm 95. Lechoneranena l'Adonai Hallelujah, Letzor Yishenu, Nekad Mafanav Betoda, Bismirot Nari Alo. Top of page 13. Shiru Ladonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Shemo, Basru miyom liyom Yeshuato, Sapru vagoyim kevodo, Bechol ha'amim niflohotav, Ki gadol Adonai, Umchulal meod, Norahu, Al kol Elohim, Ay lai lai, Ki kol Elohei, Hamim elilim, V'Adonai shamayim asa, Hod v'hadar לפניו עוז ותפארת במקדשו ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ לילה 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 ירם הים ומלואו יעלו שדי בכל אשר בו Lai lai lai, az yeranenu kol hatzeyar, lifnei Adonai ki va, yishpot haaretz, yishpot hevel betzedek, veyamim bemunato, yalai la 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 la. Lai 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 lai.
Page 14.
Adonai malachti el haaretz yismechu yim rabim Hanan v'rafel tzevivav tzedek u'mishpat michon kiso Ohavei Adonai sinora Shomer nefeshot chasidav miyad shayim yatzilheim Or zarua latzadik u'yishrei lev simcha Or zarua latzadik u'yishrei lev simcha Simchot tzadikim B'Adonai v'hodu lezecher kodasho Or zarua latzadik u'yishrei lev simcha. You may be noticing that some of the keys feel a little low tonight, and that's because someone has absconded with half of my vocal range, so bear with me as I adjust a little bit, and we'll go back to something a little bit more singable, hopefully next week. We're on page 16. Zamru l'Adonai bechinor v'kol zimra b'chatzatzrot v'kol shofar Haru lifnei hamelech Adonai Yiram hayam umlo תבל ויושבי בה, נהרות ימחאו כף יחד, הרים ירננו, לפני אדוני קיווה, לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, וימים במישרים. ירם הים ומלואו, תבל ויושבי בה, נהרות ימחאו כף יחד, הרים ירננו.
Lechadodi, page 20. Page 20.
Shai's page numbers aren't the same as ours.
My mistake. Sorry. Ezamud.
Lecha dodi likrat kala le. Hang on, Shai's gonna help us out with something else.
Just sing, Shai. Just sing.
Okay, we'll do that one. Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
Verse 1.
Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Yishemi anu el hamyuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'helitila. Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 5. Hitoreri, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי אורי שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה ב'נei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Turn to verse 9. Boi v'shalom עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה. תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת קהלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, בני שבת נקבלה. It is so beautiful to hear all of you singing along. Thank you.
22, page 22, Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat, a song, a psalm for the day of Shabbat.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. כי שמחתני אדוני בפעליך, ומעשה ידיך ארנן. מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מהיות עמקו מחשבותיך. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. צדיקה תמר
Second paragraph, indented.
כארז בלבנון ישגה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, ולא עוולתה בו.
We go from Psalm 92, our prayer for the Yom HaShabbat, the day of Shabbat, to our Shalom Aleichem, remembering the angels in our lives, those who we know very well, and maybe the anonymous angels in our lives too, whose names we don't know, but who help us in this journey in ways we can never even begin to measure. Page 24, Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, מי מלך מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. בואכם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ברכוני לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. צאתכם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלאכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
With the strength of our angels, we rise for the Baruch Hu on page 28. 28.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. לעולם ועד. לעולם ועד. יאי לי 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 לי. יאי לי
Page 30. Let's offer it together. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons. Let us hear you. Arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness away from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzevaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening.
Baruch atah Adonai Hamahariv Aravim.
32 of Avat Olam.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו ויורך ימינו ובהם נהגה יומם ולילה יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam Vaed, Vaed.
Via Hafta 36, feel free to be seated. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Let's offer 32 together. 37, I'm sorry, not 32. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you're tired or you're rested. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Don't leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They're reminders to do all of my mitzvot so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai, your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai, your God. Micha Mocha, page 40.
Mi chamocha, who is like you? Who is like you? Mi kamocha, who makes wonders? No one like you. Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, nedar b'hakodesh. Nora tehilot o sefele malchutecha ra'u banecha bokea yam lifnei Moshe ze Eli anu ve'ameru Adonai imloch leolam vaed ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la mi chamocha, who is like you? Who is like you? Mi kamocha, who makes wonders, no one like you, no one like you, no one like you. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגואלו מיד חזק ממנו Baruch Ata Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
Kahal Yisrael.
42. Hashkivenu.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, leshalom. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, leshalom. Lift us up, Adonai, and spread your wings over us all. Give us peace and keep us safe. Leshalom, leshalom, leshalom. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, leshalom. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, leshalom. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, leshalom, leshalom, leshalom. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace together, and raise us up, O guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, for your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings.
Defend us against enemies, illness, war, and famine and sorrow.
Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us.
For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and our coming to life and to peace.
Evermore. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. I know we're hearing some new melodies these last couple weeks. We're preparing for our Bluegrass Shabbat on December 10th, and we want to make sure that some of these sound familiar so that when the full bluegrass band shows up and they sing these with sweet harmony, you'll go, I think I know this tune. I think I've heard it before. We continue on page 44 with Veshamru. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et
Hashem.
לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם, עוד היא לעולם, עוד היא לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Let's rise for the Amidah on page 46.
Adonai, sefatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, Ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. El Agadol Agibur V'Yanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chazdei Avot Ve'imahot, Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo V'Yahava, Melech Ozer, U'Moshia, U'Mageh. Baruch Ata Adonai, Magin Abraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Ata gibor le'olam Adonai, mechayei hakol ata rav lehoshia, mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, mechalkel chayim bechesed, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופך עולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
52.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Take a few moments for our own personal private prayer. We'll come back together with Shalom Rav on page 60.
Feel free to continue your private meditations at your own pace, or join me on page 60. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Baruch Ata Adonai Hamavarech et Amo Yisrael Bashalom.
And so with that beautiful prayer for peace on our lips, we will come through the aisle and take names for loved ones we're thinking about for prayer for healing.
Page 253. Mi sheberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. Bless me, the source of strength, who bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Jason, we're ready to hear from Rabbi Tara.
Any word from you, Jason? Any sign of life?
Give me 1 second, guys.
Okay, great. Great. We were holding our breaths.
It logged me out. It's the video first, right?
Correct.
Okay, here we go. Ta, ta, ta.
Today is Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month of Kislev, and Hanukkah will fall early this year, as we know, right on the heels of Thanksgiving. But if we think of it in terms of the Jewish calendar, it will simply fall right on time. As always, on the 25th of Kislev, the month we have just begun. Hanukkah is a holiday in which women figure prominently. The book of Judith tells us the story of how the mighty heroine, for which the book is named, stopped the siege of Jerusalem by decapitating Holofernes, a major military leader for the Assyrian army. And in the second book of Maccabees, we read how another intrepid woman, Hannah, and her sons as well, martyred themselves rather than being forced to violate Jewish law. It is in part in deference to these brave heroines that women are not to do any work while the Hanukkah candles are lit, as we remember women's courageous role in the Hanukkah story. So Rosh Chodesh Kislev seems an important time to consider women's empowerment in our world, which these days can so often feel under siege. The threats are many to our bodies and minds and spirits. Consider yesterday's tweet from former Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, calling on people to come to the Western Wall in order to block women's monthly prayer services. Quote, tomorrow, Friday, Rosh Chodesh Kislev at 7 a.m., I and dozens of members of the Knesset will arrive to pray at the Western Wall. I call on anyone, said Bibi, who believes in the sanctity of the Kotel to come and pray with us so that God forbid this holy place will not be desecrated. End tweet. To put this statement in context, it's important to remember that in 2016, Netanyahu's government actually approved a compromise deal to create a pluralist prayer pavilion in the Western Wall. But a year later, caving to pressure from the ultra-Orthodox members of his coalition, Bibi froze the deal indefinitely. So that tweet was enough to put a fire in my belly to awake at dawn and walk the dog and get to the Western Wall by 7 a.m. And at the close of my remarks, you'll see a little slideshow that I created just to have some images to go with my description. But just to tell you in brief what the morning was like, about 200, maybe more of us gathered in the entrance area as you go on to the women's part of the Kotel. There were women and men, people of all ages, some with prayer shawls and yarmulkes, even tefillin, others not. There were some familiar faces. You know, Women of the Wall has been at this for a couple decades. I knew many of them, but then others who were busing in from Modin and other places. We gathered and had not explained the plan. We were to walk, and anyone who wanted could bring with them a Torah mantle. Jews from the diaspora had sent worn out Torah mantles that their synagogues were no longer using for Women of the Wall to carry with them. And you'll see I am holding one from a congregation in Indiana. So these were distributed and we began to walk. Many songs were sung. Ozi v'zimrat ya, God is my strength. Kol ha'ulam kulo, the world is a narrow bridge, just don't be afraid. Torah tziva lanu Moshe, and so many more. And as we were just about to approach the security checkpoints, I put my hand on Anat's shoulder and I said, Great Neck has your back. And she recalled walking the lazy river with Judy Rosenzweig and how hard it was to keep up. So the security check took a ton of time. They looked through every pocket, all the jackets, the bags, the Torah mantles. But eventually we made it onto the plaza, and I was incredibly grateful for the soldiers and police that basically made a tunnel. There were thousands of demonstrators come to protest, many of them quite violent. And so there were screeching and bullhorns, and we made it to just the area in front of the women's portion of the Western Wall. And it was a beautiful prayer service led by several different women who stood on a little plastic stool, and we sang and we danced and we prayed. And then when we got to the part of the service where we were supposed to read the Torah, because it's Rosh Chodesh, we didn't have a Torah because Anat had been stopped on the plaza. So we turned around and made our way back to her, only to find that she was sitting on the floor of the Western Wall Plaza, surrounded by security. So there was no Torah reading, no processing with Torah. Lots of shouts to free Anat, to free our Torah. The security did a pretty incredible job of keeping protesters at bay, but that part was scary. It was very, very tight. And then we continued to process off the Kotel Plaza, and there was interviewing and more singing. And so it just is such a reminder for me of the kind of courage it takes to affect change and the kind of leadership, whatever the issue is that calls to our hearts and souls. So rather than leaving you with Netanyahu's tweet ringing in your ear, I'll close with some very inspiring words offered this week by Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. He offered these thoughts at the COP26 summit in Glasgow. And I quote, "Israel is at the beginning of a revolution on climate change. We're less than a third the size of Scotland. Our carbon footprint may be small, but our impact on climate change can be mighty." Bennett continued, "If we're going to move the needle, we need to contribute Israel's most valuable source of energy, the energy and brain power of our people. This is where Israel can make a real difference." And then Bennett went on to address Israeli entrepreneurs. He said to them, "You can be the game changers. You can help save the planet. Instead of building yet another hyped up internet app, why don't you launch startups that will help solve this global threat? We are obligated to deal with it in Israel. It is at the core of our being," close quote. So, important themes for this month of Kislev: courage and leadership. In ancient times, on Rosh Chodesh, when we didn't have the internet or even a clock, what would happen is those who witnessed the new moon would light a torch on the summit of a mountain, and then someone on the next hill would see it and light their torch. And so the word of the new moon would spread. And a beautiful image in a Talmudic passage that I was studying this week offered the idea that in Babylonia, actually everyone just took it upon themselves to stand on their roofs and hold that torch. So I'm thinking about the torches we can raise up this month, whatever it is that ignites our own internal flame, our own passion to make change in this world. One of the songs that we sang with Women of the Wall this morning is an Israeli Hanukkah song. I've taught this to you before, but I'll offer it again. It's just, the words are so beautiful. Banu choshech legaresh. We have come to fight away the darkness. Biyadenu or va'esh. In our hands are fire and light. Kol echad hu or katan. Every one of us is a little light. Vekulanu or etan, but together we are a mighty light. Surah choshech al ashgor. Flee darkness, run away blackness. Surah mipnei haor. Run away from before the light. So may we each in our own way find that courage to raise up a flame of change, of healing, of courage, and of leadership. Just imagine those ancient Jews standing on their Babylonian rooftops. May this be a month of kindling light from within. Ken Yehi Ratzon, and enjoy the slideshow. It was really an incredible morning.
Before we turn to Elenu, I want to share a thought that Tara, two things actually. One that Tara told me, which is that one of the uplifting pieces of this morning is that there apparently were a number of paratroopers, young, boys, who were determined to help create a safe space for Anat and for the women of the wall. And apparently didn't have a picture of these paratroopers, but there's a growing number of, these soldiers who are looking forward to participating and promoting a sense of safety and peace. I want to add one last thought, which is that it actually, separate from the horror of Bibi Netanyahu's words and the violence that people apparently are willing to commit, even though it didn't seem to happen today. This past week was a very, very important week in Israel, a very positive, hopeful week in Israel. Hopefully all of you know this, but the law of Israel required that there be a budget passed by, I believe, November 14th, and if the budget for 2021-22 wasn't passed by the coalition in the Knesset, the government would by law fail, and there'd be new elections. And 8 to 10 days before this deadline, which was yesterday, today's on I think late Tuesday night Israel time, the coalition passed the first budget for 21-22, first budget in Israel since for 3.5 years it's been passed. And then something called an arrangements law was approved by the Knesset, 59 to 56, I think, which sort of dictates how the money is distributed and all these technical administrative things. And lastly, the third very important vote and achievement is the budget for 22-23 was passed. And so for all of us who have felt a little hopeful but humble and uncertain how likely this changed government of 8 different parties from decidedly left to decidedly right and of an Arab Muslim party, how likely might they be to be able to govern It's an incredible achievement what's happened, and an achievement that for me actually gives me even more hope. So with all of that, thank you, Rabbi Tara, for this very moving and
It's an inspiration.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do it here.
Yeah, exactly. Just maybe. Okay, let's rise for Aleinu, page 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך
287.
הוא. נאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יחיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. As always, remembered loved ones before concluding. And so we do on this Shabbat. We remember first and foremost beloved Paul Neffer, who was laid to rest this past week. Carolyn, if you'd like to rise, feel free to do so. And remember those whose yortzeit falls on this Shabbat or during this past week. Norma Aaron, Rose Adelberg, Nathan Barshop, Florence Chusmere, Philip Cooper, Herman High Convasar, Fanny Fader and Maxwell Fader, Charles Grodberg, Paula Harnick, Emmanuel Heimberg and Rochelle Heimberg, Marjorie Horowitz and Esther Seides, Alice Shapiro, Daniel Sterling, and Terry Tornberg. May all of their memories be for a blessing. If you're remembering someone whose name is not on the list, want to share their name? And if anyone want to share a name? If it's your custom to rise with the mourners, please feel free to do so. Kaddish Yatom, Mourners Kaddish, is on page 294. Yikadal v'yikadash shemer Abba.
Amen.
V'yalma divrach urte v'yamlich malchute. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. V'agalav izman kariv v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehei shmer Abba mevorach le'olam
lomei almaya.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'alal shemei d'kudesha brechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'miran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel. And let us say one last time,
Amen.
Amen. Okay, feel free to be seated. A few announcements. First of all, a wonderful, heartfelt thank you to Cantor Adam and to Shai for the beautiful music. Regardless that your voice may be deep and manly, it's still beautiful. And Shai, thank you for lifting us up as always.
And for changing the keys.
For changing the keys, exactly. All right. Tomorrow morning, first in-person Torah study in however long it's been, since maybe March 1st or something of 2000. Oh, right. We meet? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. You're right. Good point. Okay. Shabbat Minyan here in the chapel at 10:30. Sunday, November 7th, Sisterhood Rosh Chodesh with Rabbi Tara, virtual Angels in Techina, a virtual tour and slideshow of the Israel Trail. Sunday also at 6 p.m., College Connect food packing program. Lots of great programs. Sunday, November 14th, Grateful Thanksgiving food packing project at 11 a.m. Beth-El is working with the Kulanu Religious School at Beth-El and Temple Israel Religious School, helping families in the Great Neck community. So many other wonderful things going on. I want to mention November 9th, Tuesday morning, is Rabbi Tara's first installment of her civil rights series. And I want to plug this really extraordinary opportunity, April 18 to 24. This is Chol HaMoed Passover, in the intermediate days of Passover. The Congregational Civil Rights Trip. It's really a special, extraordinary experience. And I got a message from a congregant who I think we all know, but I didn't actually ask him if I could share his name, so I won't yet. But he said to me, he thinks this is such a great idea. I don't want anyone not to go for reasons of the expense. So if you know someone who you think may not be going because it feels too expensive to them, please reach out, and I will put you in contact. And as soon as Shabbat's over, I'm gonna find out whether or not I'm allowed to publicize this. Probably am, but I didn't ask. So anyway, and there are flyers in, I guess you have them, in your Siddur. Particularly any high school, how old do you have to be? You have to have a parent. She's not going to be taking responsibility without parents for young people. But, okay, what else? Did I leave anything out, Cantor?
November 19th.
November 19th.
Shabbat Capella.
Shabbat Capella, absolutely. Important.
If you love a cappella.
Say Shabbat Capella
Shabbat
before we do Kiddush. Not you, them. You know how to do it.
Say Shabbat Capella. 1, 2, 3.
Awesome.
If you like Glee, or if you have High School Musical, or any of those, or if you like, what was that big rockapella? If you like any of those groups, there you go.
Rockapella.
Sean Altman, there you go, rockapella.
All right.
Come for Shabbat Capella. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'm going to bring you a Kos Kiddush, Cantor, and you can lead us in Kiddush. If everyone could rise, that would be great.
I believe we're on page 4 if you want to follow along. ויהי ויבוקר יום השישי, ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויכל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי, ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו, אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. סברי.
לחיים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו, מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן.
אמן.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו, מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו, ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen. Before we close with Kiddush, I want to thank the bakers, Linda Diamond, Sandy Gretsch, and Roberta Lulav, and I want to thank our usher, Gloria Landsberg, Who did I leave anyone out? Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. We close cantor.
Shabbat shalom,
Hey.
Shabbat shalom,
Hey.
Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom,
Hey.
Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom,
Hey.
Shabbat shalom,
Hey.
Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, jitty bitty bitty bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom.
I can't get a hold of